Good morning. It's Charles Alvarez, CEO of Cornerstone. Hope you're doing well. Read an interesting study this weekend by the Harvard Business Review, which they did a control group of 657 companies between 50 to 200 employees, all business to business, like professional services, technology services, SaaS companies, 50 to 200 employees, and they wanted to answer two questions. The first question they want to answer is, how good do these companies do in differentiating themselves against their top three competitors? So they looked at their website, they looked at their brochures, they look at their digital print and their ads, and they compare them to the top three competitors and say, okay, if I made the colors the same, the logo the same, could I tell any difference between these four different websites and these four brochures? So that's the first question. So in other words, they were asking, how well do these companies do in differentiating themselves from the competition? The second question they want to answer was the so what. Okay, so let's say that they are differentiating themselves or are not differentiating themselves. What is the growth rate of those that are not differentiating themselves versus those that are differentiating themselves? Okay. Study took about 18, 19 months. Like I said, they did a deep dive of 657 companies, compared them to their top three competitors. And the end results were pretty surprising. I thought they were low, but I didn't think that they were this low. So the first thing that they found is that 97.2% of the companies basically sounded exactly the same as their competition. We're an MSP provider. We provide these services. We do SAP consulting. We do Salesforce consulting. And the brochures really reflected that as well. So 97.2% of companies sounded basically exactly the same, with very little deviance, or, there's some wordsmithing, but they pretty much sounded exactly the same. Okay, which meant that only 2.8% of the companies were properly, or at least differentiating themselves from their competition based upon looking at their website, their emails also, their brochures, etc. So the question becomes, so what, right? So the so what was the companies that were not differentiating themselves were growing at about an average sales growth rate per year of 14%, which is not bad. I mean, 14% is 14%, right? What they found, though, is the companies that were differentiating themselves and communicating the benefits to their through their outreach channels, they were growing at 31%. So just by differentiating yourself, you could be growing that much faster, according to the study. Um, Obviously, I'm a skeptic, so I always like to challenge things. I just don't like to take things at face value. So I actually took a look at a couple of our clients' websites, and I looked at some of our non-clients' websites, some of the prospects we're looking at. And the good thing is that our clients' website, they're definitely differentiating themselves. Part of that also is because they hired us and we helped them with their messaging. But I also looked at a lot of our prospects' website and found that it's actually pretty true, is that they sound pretty much the same as their competition. And the danger with that, obviously, is that you could really commoditize your business. And we know when you commoditize your business, because the market cannot differentiate between one company and the other, besides maybe a relationship with the salesperson, then basically it's a race to the bottom on price, and that really kills your margins. So you definitely want to avoid doing that. So one of the tools that we use, before I get into that, I'm not saying this to discourage you. If you take a look at your website and find that it's pretty much the same as others in terms of wording, there's great news in this. There's actually phenomenal news in this, which is, if you can differentiate yourself, which I'm going to give you a tool on how to head in that direction, then you can basically create a legal monopoly for your business, because you're communicating completely different than your competition. So the formula that we use, or the tool that we use, or the philosophy that we use to create messaging for our clients, is based upon the work of a guy by the name of David Gleicher. Who the heck is David Gleicher? David Gleicher was a German economist here in the United States in 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And what he did is he basically took his work and wanted to create a paper on what factors had to be in place for a company to make a change. And that change could be as simple as changing who you use to as your coffee vendor to something as very important as changing strategies. Okay. And in essence, I mean, if you think about what you're doing in sales, is you're asking somebody to make a change, right? Which is, why this work that I read on Gleicher's Formula for Change was so impressive and proves out to be over the 11 years that we've been in business to be very effective at generating messaging for our clients. What he found was so compelling and so good that he actually won a Pulitzer Prize in 1967 for his work on what factors have to be in place for an organization or a person to make a change. And what he found that there were 4 factors, and it actually is a multiplication equation on the left side of the equation, obviously. Okay, so the 3 things that had to be in place for somebody to make a change is the first thing that had to be there is the person had to be dissatisfied with something. We all know that people are 10 times more likely to avoid pain than to seek pleasure. So there has to be dissatisfaction. Okay. The second thing that has to be in place is a vision of how much better their life is going to be once they make that change. Are they going to make more money? Are they going to have a better business? Are they going to be more profitable? Are they going to be able to make the business of doing business easier? Whatever. What is the benefit? What is the tangible and intangible benefit after I make this change? Because, they're weighing, okay, if I'm dissatisfied, what's it going to cost me to make this change? And is the cost worth the reward? Okay, so that's the second thing that had to be in place. The third thing that had to be in place is an easy first step. The more difficult it is for the person to make a change, the less likely they are to make that change. Okay, so those are the 3 factors, and it's a multiplication equation. D, dissatisfaction, times V, vision, times F, first steps, has to be greater than someone's resistance to change. That's the last variable, which is resistance. Okay, so the cumulative effect of somebody's dissatisfaction, vision, and first steps has to be greater than someone's natural resistance to that change. Okay, and notice on the left side of this equation, the D times V times F, they all have to be there. In other words, if any one of those variables are 0, the chances of somebody making a change is 0. So in other words, if one of your prospects is dissatisfied and they have a vision of how much better their life would be by making that change, but they don't know the first thing to do, they're not going to make that change. If they are dissatisfied and they know the first step to take, but they're not really crystal clear on how much their life would be better by working with you, they're not going to make that change, regardless of how dissatisfied they are. If they have a vision of how much better their life could be if they made a change and had a first step, but they're not really all that dissatisfied, then they're not going to make that change. So those all 3 things have to be there for somebody to make that change. Okay, and then that has to all be within your website. It has to be within your email messaging. It has to be within your brochures, because by talking about addressing somebody's dissatisfaction, give them a crystal clear picture on how much better their life will be once they make that change, how they can go about making that change in the easy first step. Once you add all those things together, it can really separate yourself from your competition and make you rise head and shoulder above all the crazy white noise that we get. I mean, it's crazy how many digital messages we get. The good news is that most of those messages, the companies are talking about themselves and their features versus talking about the prospect and the customer. Look, I'm not saying that it's not okay to talk about your company, but we have to understand where you are in the sales funnel. If you're at the very top of the sales funnel, you want to talk about them, their challenges, their goals, their desires, and how to make it easy for them to make that change. Once they're interested and once they're engaged, then you can talk about all that other stuff, how many years you've been in business, what type of services you provide, what makes your services process different than others. That's all your credentials, all that kind of stuff, but that's at the bottom of the sales funnel. I want to encourage you that if you would like to get a third-party, no-cost view of your messaging and get some advice and some feedback, simply click the link right below this video, and let's set up a call and let's have a conversation. It's no obligation, no cost. We just like to help businesses, and this is one of the ways that we help businesses is with helping with their messaging. So I hope this video was helpful. Hope you have a wonderful day and an even better week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.